When it comes to the business of government, the story of getting regulation to work might formally start with legislation, but it often ends with pure collaboration with stakeholders. Kia ora, and welcome to the programme. In this series, we look at how certain conversations can make regulatory stewardship really work. And in this episode, we look at conversations between regulatory practitioners and stakeholders. Collaboration between stakeholders and government can make the business of government work better for all. Nice lofty lines, but how can and does it work in practice? In the programme today, we look at when it can and has, and the 7 friendly tips that we can take away from it. It happens to be here at the port, but the business of collaboration could happen anywhere. The office of Harbour Master is ancient. It has been traced back to the ancient Greeks, to at least 317 BC. Port harbour and water safety may have been as much of the Harbour Master's brief way back then as it is now. But what ancient Greece certainly didn't have was the New Zealand Port and Harbour Marine Safety Code. So what's so special about the code? Let's take a look at the players who are represented in the governance structure. First, the stakeholders, the port companies, private companies, commercial entities, may be fully or partly owned by local councils, but if they are, they're still run separately from them.
A port company is there really to exchange cargo, imports, exports and passengers. They've played a key role in the New Zealand economy. They have over time. In 1888 there was 169 ports in New Zealand, and today there's 11. The port is a key part of New Zealand's infrastructure, and it's a key role in times of peril as well, and so it has a key resilience role.
Then the regional councils. They are responsible for the harbour masters. The harbour masters are the local port regulators.
Look, regional councils have a statutory role, of course, and it's all about navigational safety. So regional councils deploy harbour masters to oversee that regulation, oversee ports, oversee harbours, make sure that we oversee all the activity that goes on those harbours as well. So it's really a regulatory role that we play and deploy harbour masters to do that.
Then there's Maritime New Zealand, a central regulator with power to intervene to protect shipping safety and the marine environment.
So MNZ sees its role as a regulator as working with stakeholders to set industry standards, supporting industry to understand and comply with those standards, and then effectively enforcing if necessary. But in the case of the code, we don't have to do all the heavy lifting, and we can act more in the role of collaborative partner. This is because all of the parties have proactively come together to work out what a good safety management system for navigation safety looks like, through self-assessments and peer assessments, have provided the education and support so people can understand what the good practice is, and also then supported each other to comply with it, given the ownership all have in the code. So Maritime New Zealand still keeps its regulatory functions, doesn't have to use them in this case, but if at any stage we see that the model is failing, we still have those regulatory powers as backup.
So yes, there are statutory powers. The legislative backstop is still available to deal with problems. But stakeholders talked to government and came out with voluntary standards, an agreed work plan, information sharing, a jointly funded secretariat, and shared ownership of the rules. Result, the code. Now, not every regulator or regulatory system is going to have a fully voluntary code like this, but if you are a regulator watching this, we hope you'll be able to take 7 friendly tips from the code experience to make your conversations with stakeholders go more swimmingly. It's a favourite one in this series of conversations programmes, and that's because it's critical.
So it's really important for the success of the code that all parties understand what the goal is and are really clear about what they do as opposed to the other parties. To do this, the code has an MOU accompanying it, which really sets out clearly the commitments, the roles and the responsibilities that each party is signed up to and exactly what they're accountable for. It's also really clear through the code and the MOU that everybody's responsibilities drive clearly for continuous improvement of navigation safety standards. MNZ isn't abrogating our responsibilities by being a part of the code, and that's really clear. At any time, we can actually evaluate people's performance or commitment to the code, and we're clear then that as the regulator, if we start to see that safety standards are being compromised, that we can step in and do something about it.
It's because of this dynamic that communication is key. That's communication with each other, regulator, stakeholder, and communication with others about the project.
I think through the code process, the listening, the sharing, and the working together is the key part of what we do. And that's where the learning occurs, and that's where the growth really occurs, and how we develop a safer port for all users, recreational and industrial.
The code provides for all parties, including MNZ, a really good understanding about what is happening on the ground, what the real issues and concerns are for the sector. It also helps us to identify what good practice is and also what are the priorities that we need to focus on as parties to take forward. It builds really good trust between all of the parties because it's quite a different model than a normal regulated party regulator. And for MNZ, it gives us really good insights on how we're operating as well, where we need to improve and what might be working well. A critical part of communication around the code too is making people understand how the code operates so that they can see that the parties are collaborating and actually delivering a good safety outcome.
The regional councils have chosen to work with Maritime New Zealand and with the ports collaboratively on the Port Safety Code. And it's a very good example of how you can do things. We can, of course, choose to be a regulator and just be authoritative, take actions, take prosecutions. But of course, at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, which is navigational safety. We want to find the best way to achieve that. And the Port Safety Code, I think, is an outstanding example of how working together, collaboratively, communicating all the time, working out the best way of attacking things really does work.
Regulators have responsibilities. They also have discretions and policy-based frames of reference that can often make co-design and co-implementation with stakeholders possible.
In a collaboration like this, trust is fundamental. It's built on relationships over time, and it's about saying what you'll do and doing what you'll say. And it's really, really critical to focus amongst the whole group on what the underlying interests are for us all. And in this case, it was clearly maritime safety.
MNZ has trust in the code because there are robust processes, accountabilities and checks and balances through the peer and self-assessments. Also, all parties have to provide resourcing or staff to make the code work, so they've all got skin in the game. All parties are also incentivised to ensure that they hold each other to account. Everybody knows that if some parties start to not be committed to the code and safety is compromised, that the regulator will step in and set the safety standards, and then some of the benefits of the code will be lost. But most of all, MNZ has trust in the code because we can see the parties all collaborating together and that safety standards are improving in the sector. The code is a really good example of how local and central government come together to achieve a common outcome. In this case, navigation safety or marine safety. We want safety in ports. And through the code, the collaboration between local and central government is absolutely key. It means the dialogue is better, the communication is better, and the outcome is better. So good regulatory stewardship enables innovation, and innovation and continuous improvement is driven by sectors and not often by the regulator. So the code in itself is an innovation, but the code also encourages innovation and continuous improvement. And it does that by people sharing good practice and innovating on top of that good practice, and also provides a forum for code parties to come together to solve problems and innovate. The other good thing about the code is it's more flexible than regulation. So it can adapt more flexibly to changing context, conditions, and technology. MNZ also can play a really vital role in ensuring that if innovation is enabled to provide a benefit for safety, but also to make sure that it doesn't compromise safety.
Innovation requires implementation. It needs flexibility and agility. That is not necessarily always going to be plain sailing. How do we mitigate the difficulties?
Each port and harbour is an independent operation, and it can quickly respond to changing circumstances, and the code allows for that. It does not expect that every port and harbour, which is different and has its own risk profile, will operate in exactly the same way. So they do have discretion within the code to work in a different way, provided, of course, that they do implement the national good practice standards of the code within their safety management systems, and that's what we're looking for. There are some common risks that must be addressed, and if they're addressed appropriately and according to the appropriate standard of the code, then safety in our ports will be so much better.
The code itself outlines the safety management system and risk management principles in the port. Every 3 years, we have a review panel that consists of one member from the regional council, which is usually a harbour master, one member from a port itself, such as the port marine manager or a pilot, and also a member from Maritime New Zealand. So each of the 3 parties in the code are represented on this panel. They visit this port and they discuss the safety management system, and at the end of it, in a spirit of openness, make an assessment as to whether that port is code consistent or not. We also have got a conference that we hold each year, and we also send out a newsletter, all in the process of ensuring best practice, sharing ideas, and working together collaboratively. It means that as a regulator, we are better informed about the risks that exist in the port. It also means that when a port is code consistent, that it meets the legislative requirements that exist under the Maritime Transport Act. And lastly, it means that there are better opportunities for us to work collaboratively and closely with our code partners in terms of achieving best practice for safety in our ports.
The key thing with mitigating difficulties is actually the working together and the sharing and the learning from each other. Through this process, what we're able to do is share our experiences and share our learning across many ports in New Zealand and through the regulator as well. And we end up with a great outcome, which is right for the right port or the right setting in which it's done. That's the beauty of the code and how we work together.
These are not usually one-shot conversations between regulators and stakeholders that produce products like the code. Relationships, continuing and evolving relationships both before and after the project goes live, are key.
The relationships of the code have been built up over time. They require continuous work as people come in and out of the code, and to keep building that trust as things go on. And yes, there can be times when there's blips in the relationship, but because of the intent of everybody trying to deliver the same safety outcome, people work really hard together to play the long game on those relationships.
If there's anything that I have learned in my career, and particularly as Chief Executive of a regional council, it is relationships are everything. The ability to be able to communicate, to call people, to work through issues and find a common resolution just paves the way to success for everybody. Again, the Port Safety Code is a classic example of that, where we are confronted with issues, sometimes really unusual and challenging issues, but working together, finding common best practice, getting the best brains together to work on it is the key of the solution. Keeping together, working together, communicating is absolutely everything.
Final tip, how did it go? Can we promote the work elsewhere? Can we share the story with colleagues across government? Can we share the lessons learned?
The code's very effective. We were able to work across New Zealand. We're able to make the ports across New Zealand safer and more efficient. And I think where we really learn is how we bring in other stakeholders. And, whether that's the harbour master, the regulator, and other ports to help and shape how we make it work across the individual port. I think the code's very successful. For me, it actually allows me to sleep at night. And it allows me to know that we've had a rigorous process, that we've had port and harbour professionals review your individual port and to make sure that the learning occurs, the improvements are made. And at the end of the day, the harbours are safer for all users across New Zealand.
Good regulatory design and improvement comes from listening to other people's stories about what they've found out from regulatory design, what works, what doesn't, and how you can adapt it for your own situation. So we hope that you've enjoyed listening to our story today and really keen to hear others' stories on regulatory design so we can use them to enhance the performance of the code or more broadly on our regulatory journey.
And there we have it, the importance of telling the story, which in this episode was done in 7 chapters, or rather 7 friendly tips on conversations between regulators and stakeholders, featuring the Port and Harbour Marine Safety Code. Setting roles and goals up front, talking to each other, trusting each other, trying something new, being flexible, cultivating relationships, and telling others as well as each other how it all went. We hope it goes well for you. Until next time, ka kite anō.